Welcome to Life Stories, where we bring you powerful narratives that inspire, challenge, and reflect the complexities of life. In today's story, we follow Ava Carter, a successful CEO who faces a moment of disrespect in her own hotel. What follows is a journey of quiet strength, dignity, and the battle for respect. This story is a reminder that true power comes not from titles or wealth, but from how we carry ourselves in the face of adversity. Stay tuned as we dive into her journey of transformation and resilience. Subscribe to our channel to begin today's story with Life Stories. It was a quiet evening in Des Moines, Iowa, a place that had never truly felt like home to Ava Carter. The wind stirred the evening air with a soft hum, as the bustling energy of the city slowly settled into the rhythm of night. Ava had been on the road for what felt like an eternity, moving between meetings and business negotiations, her schedule packed with deadlines. The hotel, Oakmark Grand, was supposed to offer her a much-needed break, just one night of peace before the board meeting she hadn't originally planned to attend in person. She didn't want anything fancy, no red carpet or fanfare. She just needed a warm bed, a key to her room, and a moment to reset. As Ava walked through the revolving glass doors of the Oakmark Grand, she took a deep breath. The familiar scent of polished wood and fresh flowers filled the air, a quiet reminder of the luxury and comfort she had worked so hard to create. Her tailored slacks were practical, not flashy, and her dusty blue blouse was elegant but understated, matching her usual style, always graceful, never loud. She wasn't the type to walk into a room demanding attention. Instead, she held herself with the quiet confidence that came from years of dedication and hard work. A confidence that didn't need to shout to be recognized. Approaching the front desk, she noticed the young receptionist, a girl no older than 21, chewing absent-mindedly on the end of her pen. The girl's acrylic nails clicked against the keyboard as she typed. When she glanced up, her expression was polite but distant, like she had already decided that Ava was just another guest, another face among the many who would come and go. She offered the kind of smile one gives to people about to be turned away, the kind that could not disguise the judgment lurking just beneath the surface. "Checking in?" the receptionist asked, her voice lacking any real warmth. Ava smiled politely, the same smile she had given 1,000 times in meetings, boardrooms, and hotels like this one. "Yes, under Carter, Ava." The receptionist's fingers danced across the keyboard, then paused. She blinked, clearly confused. She looked up again, her lips tightening into a skeptical frown. "I don't see any reservation under that name." Ava's smile didn't waver, but something shifted in the air. She had encountered this kind of hesitation before. "That's okay," she said, her voice calm but firm. "There's a suite always held open for me." The girl's tone became even colder, more dismissive. "Ma'am, we're actually at full capacity tonight. You'd need to have a confirmed booking to stay here." Ava's gaze moved past the receptionist, resting on the gold plaque that hung behind the desk. Oakmark Grand, a Claiborne property. Her name wasn't just on a reservation, it was on the building itself. The weight of ownership, built through years of perseverance, of overcoming every obstacle thrown her way, suddenly felt too heavy in the room. "I am a guest," Ava said quietly, "and more than that, I own this hotel." For a moment, the receptionist stared at her as if she had spoken in a foreign language. Then, a slow, mocking smile curled on the girl's lips, her disbelief palpable. "You own the Oakmark?" she asked, almost laughing. Ava nodded calmly. "I do." The receptionist looked as though she might burst into laughter, but instead, her gaze shifted nervously to the side. She picked up the phone, her fingers moving hesitantly toward the receiver. "I'll have to call the manager," she said, the skepticism still dripping from her words. Ava didn't flinch. She didn't rush to pull out her ID or business cards, as some would have done. Instead, she simply stepped back, her phone already in her hand. A moment of silence passed between them, the tension thick enough to slice through. Ava knew this wasn't just about a room. This wasn't a misunderstanding over names or reservation details. This was something deeper, something that, even now, after all she had achieved, still made her feel like an outsider in spaces she had built. Ava had been here before, so many times. The doubt in others' eyes. The assumption that someone like her couldn't possibly belong in rooms like this. In spaces of power and influence. It wasn't about the hotel. Not really. It was about the prejudices that still lingered. Despite all the progress she had made. It was about being seen only for the color of her skin. For what people assumed she represented. Rather than who she truly was. The call lasted less than a minute. But it was all she needed. Ava didn't raise her voice. She didn't demand special treatment. All she did was calmly tell the manager that she had been denied access to her own property and that it needed to be resolved immediately. The words were simple, yet they carried a weight that reverberated through the space. As she waited, she stood still, her presence unwavering. The receptionist continued typing, as though trying to distract herself from the reality of what was unfolding in front of her. Ava didn't move, she didn't pace. There was no need, she had already made her point. And now it was only a matter of waiting for others to realize the mistake they had made. A few moments later, the atmosphere in the lobby shifted. It wasn't dramatic, there were no grand gestures or frantic scrambling, but something subtle happened in the air. The receptionist's fingers froze on the keyboard, her eyes darting around nervously, unsure of what was coming next. Ava stood still, her phone still in her hand, and waited, the quiet fire in her chest growing but never betraying itself outwardly. She wasn't angry, no. That would be too easy. Anger wouldn't fix this. What she was feeling was something deeper, a quiet, unwavering sense of justice that demanded to be recognized. A small part of Ava wanted to take the easy route, to pull out her identification, to remind them that her name was on every quarterly report. Every executive board memo. She could have easily pulled up emails, ownership papers, photos from the ribbon-cutting event when the Oakmark Grand had first opened. But that wasn't the point. The point was that she shouldn't have to prove herself anymore. She shouldn't have to jump through hoops just to be treated with respect in her own building. This wasn't about the paperwork. This was about the way people so easily assumed she didn't belong. As she stood there, waiting, she could feel the shift in the air. The stares from the few guests sitting in the lobby grew sharper. Their curiosity now laced with disbelief. Ava had seen this look 100 times before, the look that said, "Who are you to be here? What gives you the right?" Minutes later, the assistant manager appeared. He was a thin man in a crooked tie, a clipboard in hand. His badge read, Assistant Manager Neil Dorrance. He glanced at Ava and immediately began speaking with a forced cheer, as though trying to make the situation seem less awkward than it was. "Good evening. Is there a problem with your reservation?" he asked. The words coming out too quickly. Ava kept her composure. "No, there's no problem. I just need the suite that's always held for me." Neil hesitated, looking Ava over once more as though searching for a sign that would justify the confusion. The reluctance, the doubt he still held in his eyes. He looked past her to the receptionist, who was still nervously typing, probably hoping for some way out of the mess that had been created. Without missing a beat, Ava spoke again, her voice calm but unwavering. "I'm not going anywhere. You can verify whatever you need. But I'm not moving." Security began to appear, not aggressively, but their presence was unmistakable. One officer stood near the elevators, the other by the coffee bar. Watching the situation unfold, Ava didn't flinch. She didn't let the intimidation affect her. She knew exactly what this was about. And she knew exactly how to handle it. As Neil muttered something into his walkie-talkie, Ava noticed the shift in the room, the subtle way everyone's eyes moved away from her. Their body language stiffening, the air grew thicker, heavier. The receptionist, still tapping away on her keyboard, glanced up now and then, her gaze lingering just a little too long, probably trying to piece together who this woman really was. Ava knew the moment she saw the young woman's face turn pale that the truth had finally dawned on her. The manager returned shortly after, flanked by two men, one in a gray suit, the other in a company fleece. They moved with purpose, and their eyes flicked nervously between the desk and Ava. She recognized them immediately, the regional vice president, Brent Kessler, and district manager, Carlos Reno. Brent approached quickly, nodding at Neil without even stopping. "Miss Carter, we are so sorry," he said, his voice clipped, almost breathless. "I just got the call from corporate. We're taking care of this right now." Neil stood frozen, visibly uncomfortable, while the receptionist continued to stare at Ava, her shock evident. Carlos stepped forward, checking his tablet. "Suite 1202 has been cleared. Your usual fruit tray and espresso order will be waiting, and the driver will take you wherever you need in the morning." Ava gave a small nod, a barely perceptible smile tugging at her lips. "Thank you," she said, her voice as calm as ever. But she wasn't done. She wasn't interested in their apologies, their sudden change of tone. She wanted to see what would happen next. How they would react now that they knew who she was. Would they suddenly treat her like she belonged? Or would their ingrained biases resurface, showing just how fragile their respect had been? She stood still, watching the staff, her gaze flickering over the receptionist, now visibly anxious, tapping her nails nervously against the desk. Ava knew the truth of this moment. It wasn't about a suite or the amenities, they were just the surface. What had happened was far more profound. It was a reminder of how easy it was for people to overlook you when they didn't think you belonged. It was a lesson, one Ava had learned years ago and was still teaching. By the time Ava reached her suite, the evening had taken on a quieter tone. The lobby had resumed its usual flow, with guests checking in, luggage being wheeled across the polished floors, and the sound of coffee cups clinking in the bar area. But for Ava, the air still felt thick, heavy with the weight of what had just transpired. She entered the suite, and though the room smelled faintly of lemon and eucalyptus, her usual scent preference, it didn't offer her the peace she had hoped for. As she stepped into the room, the luxury of the suite almost felt like a hollow comfort. The fruit tray was there, just as promised, and the espresso machine sat neatly on the counter. A handwritten card with her initials waiting on the table. But nothing about it felt right. This wasn't about the amenities. This wasn't about the luxury. It was about something far deeper. Something that, despite all her success, still made her feel small, unseen. She took a deep breath, trying to push away the lingering frustration, the exhaustion that was starting to settle in her bones. But it wasn't just fatigue. It was the quiet ache of being constantly misunderstood. Despite everything she had built, despite the 17 properties, the team of executives, and the achievements that had once seemed impossible, she still had to fight for recognition. For respect, she still had to prove her worth. Time and time again, and that realization stung more than anything else. As she sat at the desk, her phone buzzed with a message from her assistant, asking if she wanted a media statement about the incident. Ava didn't reply immediately. She could have easily gone public. Could have made it a viral sensation with just one tweet or interview. The media would have been all over it. The story of a black woman CEO being denied access to her own hotel would have made headlines everywhere. But that wasn't what she wanted. Not tonight. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about making a scene. It was about something much more profound, respect. It was about showing that no matter how many times she was dismissed, she would stand tall, unapologetically herself. The knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. Room service had arrived. The young man who entered was polite, offering the fresh espresso along with a note of apology from the kitchen manager. He also mentioned that they could send a massage therapist to the room. An offer Ava appreciated but knew wasn't necessary. She thanked him softly, taking the espresso and setting it aside for a moment. As the door closed behind him, Ava sat back down on the edge of the bed, her hands folded. She closed her eyes for a moment, savoring the silence. But it wasn't the kind of peace she needed. It was a fleeting moment of calm, one that didn't quite reach the depth of her soul. She was still aware of the way the world saw her, of the assumptions people made when they looked at her. She could still feel their eyes on her, could still hear the unspoken judgments. But she wasn't angry anymore. She had been angry once. Years ago when she had to fight for everything she had. But now, it was different. She had learned that anger didn't change anything. What changed people was quiet strength. What changed the world was consistency, the ability to stand tall. Even when the world tried to make you bend, Ava had learned that the best way to lead was not by shouting or demanding attention, but by showing up, day after day, in the face of adversity. Ava glanced at the folded note on the table. The one from the receptionist. Kayla. It was a simple note. A small gesture that, in its simplicity, meant more than any formal apology could. Thank you for your grace. I'll be better. Ava had read it several times already. And for the first time in a long while, she felt a quiet hope that things might actually change, not just for her, but for others too. It was the beginning of something new. Something that would shift the way people saw each other. And perhaps the way they saw themselves. With a deep breath, Ava stood up and walked toward the door. She knew there was still much work to be done. But for tonight, she had made her point. As she prepared to leave the suite, she felt a sense of resolution settle within her. The battle for respect was far from over. But for the first time in a long while, she felt like the world was finally starting to see her. Not as the CEO, not as the owner, but simply as Ava, strong, determined, and unapologetically herself. As Ava walked out of the hotel and into the car waiting for her, she didn't look back. The sound of her heels echoed softly on the pavement as she moved toward the future. There was no need to look behind her. The weight of judgment, of being misunderstood, had been left in the hotel lobby. What mattered now was the knowledge that she had faced it head-on and walked away stronger. In that moment, Ava realized that true strength wasn't just in building empires or leading teams. It was in the quiet moments when you chose to stand tall. Even when the world tried to make you shrink. Her journey had been one of constant challenges. But it had also been a journey of learning. Learning to find peace within herself. To let go of the need for validation. And to rise above the expectations that others had placed on her. She had made her mark. Not just in the hotel industry, but in the hearts of those who had seen her for who she truly was. It wasn't about what she owned or how much power she held. It was about respect, dignity, and the quiet strength that came from within. Ava knew that she had shown them something far more powerful than any position or title ever could. As the car drove away, she glanced out the window. The city lights flickering in the distance. A new chapter was beginning. And she was ready for it. Ava had learned that in life, you didn't have to shout to be heard. You just had to know who you were, and walk like it. Every single time. If this story resonated with you, made you pause or reflect on your own experiences, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel for more life stories. Your support keeps us going, bringing you powerful stories that inspire and challenge us all. See you soon.